Hey, what's up, everyone? My name's Zack Olinger. In this podcast series, I talk about relationships. Now, I know, as a man, you may not want to talk about relationships, or you may even tell me that the relationship that you're in is already pretty good. But I'm going to invite you to consider this. Could you be a little bit more fulfilled in the relationship that you have? I would like to have you consider that there may be other ways to kind of see the conflicts that are truly just unnecessary that we all experience in a different light. And if you're open to receiving or just giving me a little bit of your time, then I look forward to my guests and I inspiring you to become a man that can have more freedom, less conflict, and more pleasure in their relationships. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining me on another episode of the Real Zack Olinger. Today, I've got Jason Mefford on as a guest, and not sure exactly what he's got in store for us, but we did some pre-talk, discussion. And so I'm just going to kind of hand it over to Jason and see where this conversation goes. So thanks for joining us today.
Well, no, thanks, Zach, for having me. I mean, I know we've known each other a little bit kind of tangentially. So it's nice to actually get on here and be with you, especially because I know you said, I think kind of the purpose is around relationships, right?
Absolutely.
And I know, I know you've talked before about your divorce. I've been divorced as well. So I've had some great relationships. I've had some not so great relationships, some relationships that were great and that no longer became great, right? Both personally as well as professionally. So it's I love this topic because it's one that everybody is dealing with.
Yep.
Right. It's like we're all in relationships with other people, whether that be romantic, whether it be business, whether it be family, right? And sometimes those family relationships, oh man,
yes,
those can be some of the worst ones, right? But it's funny because as we were talking, so again, I mean, point me however you want me to go here, but one thing as we were talking before is that I've learned about relationships is to focus on ourselves. And so it seems like so much of the time we want to change the other person, but we are the one who has to change. Okay. And so where this is coming from, again, I learned this kind of, well, the hard way and the easy way, right? Isn't that the way we always learn?
For sure. Yeah.
So I had gone through my divorce. It was surreal and easy initially, and then it got really tough. Okay. Mm-hmm. But anyway, with that, I remember, here I was, a middle-aged man trying to date again.
Yes.
And, I remember those times, online dating. It was, late at night, just scanning through profiles and what people wanted. You went through the same thing, man, right?
Yep.
So, I'd be sitting there, it's like 11 or 12 o'clock at night, and maybe I'd been drinking a little bit because I was feeling sorry for myself.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And thinking nobody's ever gonna love me, right? I'm just gonna, the rest of my life, the last half of my life, I'm just gonna be alone. And we know that's bullshit. And again, I don't know if you're okay with
no, totally.
On here.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
Which we know is bullshit, even when we say it, right? Mm-hmm. But I remember, I kept thinking or wanting to find that perfect person, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember, I don't remember where I heard this from, but somebody that said, quit trying to find the perfect person and focus instead on being the perfect person. Right. So instead of trying to find the perfect romantic relationship, work on myself to make sure that I was the best person I could be, to kind of be worthy. That's a bad word to use, but I think it kind of gets a point across that I would be worthy of having someone in a relationship like that, right? And so I went from, it really wasn't too long of feeling sorry for myself. It was only maybe a couple months. Well, maybe it was closer to 6 months actually. And when I finally did that, and I really started thinking about working on myself and trying to make sure, because obviously I screwed up in my marriage too, right? I mean, I did some things that I shouldn't have done. Both anytime there's a divorce, both people are at fault. Okay.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's but when I made that change, and instead of trying to find the perfect person, I tried to be the perfect person for someone else. Boom, I met my current wife. And so it's kind of one of those things too, that I talk a lot with people that I work with, is the mirror.
Yes.
And thinking about a mirror, and it's like, hey, if you're in a relationship with somebody and things aren't going the way you want it to, like, let's say they're disrespecting you. Okay. I mean, a lot of people say that, right? Oh, they're disrespecting me. Well, hold up the mirror, because usually other people reflect back what we're giving.
Mm-hmm.
And so chances are, if you feel like you're being disrespected, if you feel like you're not being loved the way you need to be loved, you're probably not doing that either, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you're sitting there nodding,
Yes.
so I'm guessing you've experienced that too, right?
Everything you just spoke about. Yeah, there's so much I want to respond to, but yeah, keep going.
No, respond. Let's just kind of go back and forth. Like I said, I've got a couple of points I thought about bringing out, but let's dig
Cool.
deeper on this, or go deeper if you want to.
All right. Well, thanks. Yeah, everything that you just spoke to, I'm like, that was me. That was me. That was me. Except
Not the
for
only crazy one, right?
no, yeah. I just have to applaud you about being much faster than I am, because 6 months I was still drinking. It took me closer to like 5.5 years, even though it was my choice to leave my marriage. I was drinking every night for a long while there, and feeling sorry for myself, and like nobody's gonna want me, that kind of all of that kind of bullshit was happening. And this whole aspect of the mirror, there were so many points that you had. I'm not even sure I'm going to remember them all, but the mirror aspect of my current relationship, that's definitely something that we both acknowledge, and that we both appreciate, like how we mirror each other. And to that point about the mirror, I know when I tell my kids, it doesn't come up often, but I've told them before about, like, hey, we divorced because your mom and I pretty much gave each other reasons not to. It was trust and respect were the biggest things, but we both did that to each other, right? And I could definitely tell and think back to examples of what I did to create distrust and what I did to create disrespect, and that kind of a thing. So I love that particular point about, like, if you're seeing it in somebody else, like, yeah, you probably need to do some looking and see where it's coming out in you, and so I love that. I love that particular point. And yeah, there was just everything you said I really just resonated with. So if I can think of like other things where I was like, oh yeah, that point, but there was just so much there, so I just really appreciate you talking to that. So
Well, because I think it comes back to, that mirror, like you said. I mean, sometimes it is things like trust and respect. I mean, those are things you have to have in a relationship, right? If you don't trust the other person, if you don't respect the other person, it's hard to stay in a relationship, right? And again, I mean, sometimes things go so far that you really can't come back, right? Or like with my first marriage, it was really that we'd gotten to a point to where I wanted to go one way, she wanted to kind of stay the same way, and it just wasn't working, right? And the path that I felt like I needed to go down was not a path that she was going to go down. So, okay, no fault in that way, that I'm just different now. I need to go somewhere else. And I think that's something that's important for people to realize about relationships too, is that sometimes we outgrow certain relationships, and it's okay, right?
Right.
There's like nothing wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, I have some friends that I was best of friends with, you know, through grades, from grade school up through high school.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I talk to those people, 30 plus years later, there's some of the people I just don't jive with anymore.
Yep.
And it's nothing personal. We'll get on a call, we'll try to talk, we'll catch up. The first 10 minutes is kind of okay. And then it starts to become a little uncomfortable because we're just so different now than we were back then. And there's nothing wrong with that. I still love these guys, that I was friends with,
Mm-hmm.
but we're just not the same anymore. And our relationship is different. There's another set of friends from that same time frame I haven't talked to in, again, about 30 years. And we reconnected, and it was just like, boom. I mean, we were right back at it where we were. And so, different people, we're going to have different relationships with different people in different ways throughout our life. Right.
Yeah.
And it's even, I mean, I've done stuff too where it's like, I mean, I've had coaches and mentors that I've worked with, that I've been in relationships with, love the people. But there was just some point where it's like, okay, it's time to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's okay as well. Right. Because sometimes we just want to hold on
Mm-hmm.
to those relationships. And I mean, the harder you try to hold on to something, right, the
Yes,
more
it
you
slips away.
repel. Yeah, the
Yeah.
more it slips away, the more you repel.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing worse than somebody who is needy in the relationship. The other person doesn't want anything to do with them at that
Right.
point, right? Unless they have some sort of a what's the right word is escaping me right now, but
Like a codependency.
codependency, that's the word I was trying to think of, right? So
Mm-hmm.
some people do in that situation, they hang on because they have that need for codependency.
Mm-hmm.
But those relationships are kind of messed up anyway. But that's another thing I think as well, is it's okay to have relationships change, evolve, start, stop over time.
Mm-hmm.
It's been the same way with people with me in business as well. I mean, I told you, coaches and mentors, but even certain clients, or
Mm-hmm.
people that certain things that I was doing, there just came a time where it's like, and it's that question of, if you're starting to question a relationship, ask yourself the question, am I gaining more by being in the relationship or by not being in the relationship?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I would have certain clients that I would dread getting an email from them, and after being on a call for a half an hour or an hour with them, I was just drained and felt like I was kind of beat up. And
Mm-hmm.
not that they were beating me up, but they just sucked the life out of me.
Right.
Right. It's like, again, at those points, then you just have to kind of stop and say, is it worth trying
Mm-hmm.
to save the relationship, or is it just time to move on?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a few things on that too. And I remember another point from the previous section that we were talking about. So I'll talk to this here about it's okay that, relationships, that we outgrow them, and to like take care of ourselves, and to, really just put ourselves first. Right. Cause I always like the analogy of you can't pour from an empty cup. And I think a lot of us, when we're in client relationships or intimate relationships or even family relationships, friendship, doesn't really matter, like where we feel, if we started the relationship, if we were in a relationship and we're feeling like we're outgrowing it, or it's no longer really serving us and being positive in our lives, that there's this obligation, to the relationship. There's this, are we being selfish? Are we, are we just like, there could be a sense of guilt, for some of us around just wanting to like leave or dissolve or change the relationship. And I think it's important for us to like you said, really, really consider what is serving us, and that it's not selfish to take care of ourselves. Like that's definitely one of the things I learned the hard way through my divorce, especially being somebody who is used to taking care of other people and like just wanting to um, serve other people. I think for those of us that have that type of personality, when we change a relationship, or like just the idea of like putting ourselves first is kind of alienating, and it definitely feels very selfish. It definitely felt selfish to me after the divorce, and started thinking about that, be like, do I put myself first? Because like that seems very contrary, to me. And I didn't like it in the beginning, but as I started to do it, and as the more I thought about it and the way my life changed when I started to do it, I was like, hell yeah, I put myself first. Like it's like, because if I don't, like the only one like that is responsible for me is me. And I used to frame it like the only one that's going to take care of me is me. Like, ultimately, I can't look to my partner for that. I can't look to my parents or like any of my friends. Like they're not responsible for taking care of me, so like it's up to me to manage that. And that's not selfish, that's just being responsible, like that's taking self responsibility. It's taking your own authority back in a way, right? It's so there's definitely that piece. But it took a process, and it took a lot of change to do that, which kind of segues into the point that I wanted to talk about, that you were talking about before, about in relationships, that we do want to, there's a lot of times we want to change the other person or fit a square peg into a round hole and that kind of a thing. And we have expectations of how that person should be or whatever, how the relationship should be. But really it comes down to, us and taking care of ourselves, in the sense of like learning about our own self. And that was something that I also had to really learn from the divorce. And that's kind of what got me started down the whole self-reflection process, because through the questioning of like, nobody's going to want me, how do I knew what kind of relationship I wanted. And just like you spoke about, like, who do I need to be to, and I know you said the word worthy, and I would say attract, it's the same idea, right?
There's a better
Yeah,
word, much better
yeah.
word.
Yeah, but depending on who you are and who's listening, they how it lands for you. But it's the same idea, Who do I need to be to bring that into my life? Like how do I need to show up for the partner that the way I want to be? Because I could see how I was in my marriage and how that didn't work, So it's like, okay, well, what do I need to do? What do I need to change? Who do I need to be to get a woman that's it I mean, not that my ex-wife was horrible, but definitely there was things that I would wanted different. So who do I need to be to attract that or to bring that into my life? And that took a long time for me to, there was a lot there for me to chip away at, because there was a lot about myself as it slowly came into my awareness, as I reflected back on these different areas of our relationship, where it was like, okay, so that's what started me down that path. But those are the kind of the pieces that I wanted to speak to. So I know I just kind of put a lot out there, and I was noticing you taking notes. I was like, I need to start doing that too.
Well, I just like to write down a few words, because it always reminds me.
For sure.
It goes back into my whole idea of, I've been a teacher / trainer for a long time too, and it's really writing a few notes actually literally helps you program it better in your brain to remember too.
Right.
But as you were talking there, because I think, like you said, most of us feel like we can't put ourselves first, or we're selfish if we put ourselves first. But that's a broken model that so many people are living with, and that's why people are so unhappy, so often in relationships, is because they're not taking care of themselves, or maybe things have changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, my first marriage, I got married pretty young. I was 22, right? So I was young. I was still believing and had a lot of ideas of what life meant. based on the indoctrination of my parents and the community that I grew up in. And some of those things changed when I got into my 30s, right? Because I was a different person in my 30s than I was in my early 20s when I got married. And I know that was one thing that was hard for my ex-wife to understand or wrap her head around. Like, well, we made all these plans when we got married and you promised to be with me our whole life. And now why are you changing your mind? You know, it's like, it's okay for us to change our minds.
Right.
You know, if the other person doesn't appreciate that, I mean, there's certain things that I do now that I don't do now that I didn't do when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
I've got different experiences. I'm a different person
Mm-hmm.
than I was back then. And I mean, come on, gosh, would we really expect people to be exactly the same person as they were when they were 22 as
Right.
they are when they're 50? I mean, come on. We've had how many experiences of life that teach us and mold us as people as we're growing. Of course, I'm not going to be the same person at 50 that I was at 22,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think sometimes that goes into the relationship as well, is that especially if one partner is growing or changing and the other one is not, in any relationship,
Mm-hmm.
that does make it difficult, right? And again, I think that's one of those times when it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to realize that sometimes we outgrow relationships or we need different relationships to get us to the next level.
Yes.
Back to like the coaches or mentors that I had. It's like you brought me to a certain point, but now I need to kind of go to a different point. So I need some help from somebody else. And it's okay.
Right.
It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it too. As you were speaking and speaking about being a teacher and things like that too, I remember I was talking to a friend yesterday, in fact, about relationships and her current relationships and where she's navigating and what she's navigating through. And um, I was like, I think it's okay to like look at relationships as just what do we need to experience and what do we need to learn from this person, like in that time, like not that some relationships can't be long lasting, but it really takes the two people or the people involved in the relationship to really kind of keep evolving and changing with the relationship. So some of these things can be lifelong things. Like you said, there's some friends that you knew back 30 years ago, you pick up and you're good, and that it's and then some you don't. And so the ones that don't, it's just like you had different teachers for different classes, right? Like, or you went to a different grade, right? You leveled up, like you moved on. And so now you've got a new set of teachers. So like, I think it's okay to like look at relationships in that same kind of context. Like some of them are going to, some of your teachers might have went from one grade to the next. I know my kids have definitely had that. So you're going to have some people in relationships that are going to graduate with you, and you're going to have some that don't. And not just holding on to or expecting or just kind of like allowing yourself to kind of feel stuck or obligated or guilty for change, because like you said, it's inevitable. I mean, it's just part of life. It's just change.
Well, and when those changes come, this is another thing, and it took me a while, right? Because with some relationships, especially after you go through something emotional like a divorce, it took me a while to release her with love. Okay,
Yes.
because and again, that's the because there was a lot of resentment, there was a lot of negative feelings, obviously going through some of that stuff, but I think too, the quicker that we can just release with love and gratitude and move on, the better we are, because it doesn't do us any good to hold on to things. It's like that whole idea of revenge and forgiveness, right? Forgiveness is not for the person you're forgiving.
Right.
Forgiveness is for you, so
Mhm.
you can actually move on and get past whatever it is, right? Forgiveness is more for us than it is for the other person. And but so much of the time we don't want to do that. We want to hold on to it.
Yeah, that definitely resonates with me too, because like I said, it took me forever, like 5 years, and it was just I look back on it and I don't really beat myself up on it, but I'm like, that's 5 years of like seriously. So that was a long time. I remember when I realized that I had actually started to like let her go, because I would remember the anniversary of the divorce, and I just remember it was like 2019, and the date rolled by, and it was like a week or two later, and I'm like, oh shit, like I didn't even pay attention to that. I was like, that's a big deal. I was like,
It's
that's
a big deal.
huge, and but yeah, releasing her with love just happened so slowly and gradually for me, like, because yeah, I can just absolutely relate to holding on like with iron fists. I don't know, I'm going to date myself here, but the Never Ending Story, the movie, I don't, have you seen
Yeah.
that, right?
Oh yeah.
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 So you've got the rock giant guy, right? He's just like, I love the scene because he's just like, big strong hands, and I'm like, that's exactly how I held on. It was just like as hard as I could, even though it was my choice to leave, and it just kind of like bewildered me in a way. Like I was like, I wanted to leave because the same thing where it's just kind of like you said with like your first wife, where is like I was changing. And I remember this conversation that I had with my ex-wife where I was like, look, like I've learned that, like I've seen now that like you're gonna need to be you. I said, but I can't be that. I can't do that with you. I can't be here with you as you're being you. Like it's not gonna work for us. But even though I had that intellectual realization and I said those things and it was my choice to leave, yeah, I still held on to the memories and like all of the past, because it wasn't all bad. Like there was just the idea of the relationship that I wanted out of that, I held on to forever and slowly released it. But releasing her with love, because there was resentment on both sides, and frustration and anger and hurt and all of that. So um, I've learned to feel the emotion and acknowledge it, but not sit in my shit for so long, because, like you said, what was I gaining from that? I mean, seriously, like nothing
Well,
positive, nothing
yeah,
positive.
and it was holding you back
Yeah.
from being the person you needed to be for your next relationship,
Yes, it
right?
was.
Because who wants to be with somebody who's resentful and angry,
Yep.
right? And so as long as we continue to hold on to that resentment and anger, who's going to want to be with us, right? So again, it's just like the forgiveness, right?
Hmm.
Letting it go, that's what actually helps us.
Yeah.
And I know too, I mean, I wanted to kind of share too a little bit about, because obviously I've learned a bunch. I've had a great relationship now. I think we've been together for 8, 9 years now.
Hmm.
Is some of the things that I'm doing as well, right? Because I think, like we talked about the mirror, I'm trying to
Hmm.
be more aware of anytime something happens. Okay, look in the mirror. Am I partly to blame for this? The idea of thinking about different stories, right? So sometimes I will knee jerk react back to, oh, when my current wife says something, it triggers me a little bit because when my first wife used to say that, it meant this. Well,
Hmm. Yep.
is that what she actually means? Most of the time it's not, right? And so the more aware that I am about that, the better. But kind of too with that mirror is that the book, The Five Love Languages, I think is great too, because so much of the time, if we don't feel like we're necessarily being loved the way we want to be loved, are we showing to the other person what they want, right? So
Hmm.
again, it's like if somebody's love language is gifts and they're buying people gifts all the time to try to show them that they love them, but the other person could care less about gifts,
Right.
it's work that doesn't need to be done. Instead, if it's touch or if it's words, then even if you might have the love language of gifts, give your partner, give the person in relationship that you're with the words or the touch, let's say, if it's that. And the other thing too is just the gratitude. It's like I actually go out of my way to remind myself many times during the day to tell her that I love her and to express my gratitude for what happens. Because I think the more that we can the more that we can feel that gratitude, the more that we express the gratitude, the better any relationship actually is. And so even when you switch to a business standpoint, because this is what I try to teach people that I help with leadership, is tell your people you appreciate them, show the gratitude. And so much of the time people are like, well, that's what I pay them for. That's their job. They don't need, I'll tell them if they're screwing up, but I'm not going to tell them they're doing a good job. Well, okay, don't tell them they're doing a good job and they're going to leave. They're going to quit, right? Because most people, again, we want to hear that and get those words of affirmation that what we're doing is actually the right thing. And so it's, express the gratitude. If it's a romantic relationship, say I love you. Another little trick that I learned is hopefully my wife doesn't listen to this one, so she doesn't know my trick, but I read at one point that actually touching someone 19 times a day, so that there's actually, and it's not like giving her a big hug and kiss every day sort of thing, but there will be little times during the day that I will intentionally just go over and put my hand on her shoulder for just a second and then go on with what we're doing, right? That actually too, especially in a romantic relationship, even simple physical touch like that goes a long way for people realizing and feeling the love that we have for them as well.
Yeah, there's a few things to that kind of comes up for me. So like to speak to the physical touch and just being intentional about it, to me, that just speaks to some people might be like, well, that's intentional, and like is it where's that, like it may seem not authentic, but it is intentional, and it's just to me it's showing an intention to be present, even if it's just briefly. You're showing your presence, like, so that I think the feminine responds to, even if it's brief. She's aware, even on a subconscious level, that you're choosing to be present. Like, I'm here with you, I see you, like I'm choosing to be with you, even if it's just for like a couple of seconds, like, and it's just that reminder. Even so, 19 times, you spread it out over the day, and it's a good, constant, steady reminder that I'm present, and that I think is a great thing for a masculine to do for the feminine, because I think just that piece is something that they really respond to. So that's one thing I wanted to talk to.
It's not like I'm carrying around a 3x5 card.
No, totally, exactly. Yeah.
I'm not counting.
Yeah.
And to any of the people that might be sitting there thinking, well, if it's intentional, it's not really authentic. Well, isn't the fact that you're intentional about it, doesn't that actually make it authentic?
That's what I was saying too. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I wanted to speak to that, because I just try to anticipate anybody's kind of a counter when they're like, well, I don't know how I feel about it. Well, think of it like this, like, yeah. So like, I like to put that out there for sure. And then when to tie into the leadership part about like showing gratitude and things like that, be like, well, it's their job and all that kind of thing. And there's the saying that says, people don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad management or bad leadership. And it's kind of like the same could be true in a relationship, right? You're not showing the gratitude, you're not showing the love, like you're not really being a good leader within the relationship. I mean, I think that's a good metaphor to kind of tie in for some people to kind of look at it that way. Not that you want to treat it like a business relationship, it's not transactional, but it's the same, the principle is the same, like you got showing the gratitude. Yeah. So I really enjoyed that
totally.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, I guess, too, like what's been some of the like best resources for you as far as like your own development of like gaining like a self-awareness that's kind of helped you like with your relationships, to become the person you wanted to be or needed to be to attract in what you have now and what you wanted.
Yeah, so I mean, we made reference to the 5 love languages book. I mean, that is one that I think anybody who's serious should take a look at. I mean, for me, again, it's I'm always learning and growing and developing. I mean, I take lots of training myself. I read a lot. I listen to podcasts, do other things. And what I just try to do is anytime that I hear something that really resonates with me,
Hmm.
I try to write it. I don't try. I'm getting rid of that word
I
try.
know I
I,
know.
I write it down, right? That's why I take notes. And then, for the ones that are stories that work for me, I actually do kind of like little mantra stuff. And I just keep reminding myself of those different things, right?
Hmm.
And it's, like you said, it's the couple that we've kind of gone through and talked about today, the mirror,
Hmm.
and I'm using that all the time, right? I mean, that's a concept that I learned that I try to apply in any relationship that
Hmm.
I'm dealing with, right? The idea of taking care of ourselves. It's okay for us to change our mind. It's
Hmm.
okay for other people to
Yes.
change their mind, right?
Hmm.
Because again, it's like, I loved what you said too, that is one of those things that I've been implementing more the last few years, is that whole idea of I'm the only one that can take care of myself. I'm responsible for myself, right?
Hmm.
And I can't rely on any relationship to, fill me up, give me what I need. If I'm not doing that for myself, right,
Yep.
then I'm not going to get it anywhere. And I remember when I was early on in my career, my managing partner at the company that I was working with, he was encouraging us to get on nonprofit boards and do some other little programs like that. So I had to write some sort of a thing to kind of put in or apply for some position. And I said, hey Bruce, will you write my recommendation for me? And he goes, I'm not going to do that for you. If you can't write your own recommendation and toot your own horn, nobody's going to do it for you. So you write it and I will sign it.
Ooh.
And that was pretty early in my career, where it's like, hey, if you're not going to toot your own horn, and not being like egotistical,
Right.
but in that same kind of vein, if we're not going to take care of ourselves, who is going to?
Hmm.
And the more that we have a clear and healthy relationship with ourself, the easier every other relationship is.
Yep. Yes, I agree with that. That's something that I had a conversation with my youngest son, Milo, about, and it's actually in another the other podcast that I have, that my conversations with Milo Volume 1. It's in there about, yeah, how I develop my relationship with myself, as I can easily see how it transcends and into like every other relationship that I have, and there's just so many great things that come from that when we can relate to ourselves in a authentic and healthy way, like how that shows up on the outside with everyone else. There's just, I mean, once you become aware of it and you see it, it's like there's no stopping. Like, you don't want to go back. You don't ever want to like stop developing that, because it's I mean, it changes your life.
Well, it does. It changes our life, but it also changes the lives of people around us.
For sure.
Again, how do you change the world one person at the time? And you start with yourself. And so
Hmm.
again, I mean, having you love yourself, have a good relationship with yourself, not only helps you, but people like your son Milo are sitting there looking at you, right? Because he's looking to daddy
Right.
to see what a man is like.
Hmm.
And so he's going to go off of how you treat yourself, what you're doing as well. He's going to learn that. He's going to emulate that as well.
Hmm.
And so, like we said at the beginning, a lot of people are like, man, taking care of yourself is pretty selfish. Well, not taking care of yourself is pretty selfish, because you hold that back from
Right.
everyone else around you, right? Because we can only show up as the best us if we've taken care of ourselves, and then we can give, we can share, we can model,
Hmm.
to other people what life can be like, And so it's actually selfish of us not to do that and not to share with other people.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you bringing that up, because that's definitely been one of the things that's been an inspiring factor, like in my life, are my children, because I have two boys, and they're right at the teenage years, at the beginning of the teenage years, and setting the stage for them on how to like just show up, because relationships like are going to start to be a thing for them, like the opposite sex, and like or just relationships of an intimate nature are going to be more coming into their awareness, and they're taking on their interest and that kind of a thing. And it's always been a big like thing for me to like give back to the feminine, or back to women, because women have been such a huge played such a huge role in my life. Like men have been present, but they haven't shaped me like the way that women have shaped me. They haven't been like the support that I have had, as much as like women have, the way that women have shown up for me, and like been my teachers really. So I wanted to give back to that. So setting the stage for them on, yeah, relating to themselves in a healthy way, and then taking the lessons that I learned from being with their mom, and like, here's a better way to go about like showing up in an intimate relationship, and how can I model that in the best way possible, right? So like that's definitely been an inspiration. So like giving back piece, and like not holding that back, yeah, that's a great, I just really really appreciate that point, because yeah, that resonates with me too.
Yeah, because like, yeah, I don't know what else to say on that, but yeah, it's actually selfish for us not to take care of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah,
then we can't be the best for everyone else around us if we don't have that.
yeah, I agree. Awesome. Well, thanks, Jason. I really appreciate the talk. Is there, I want to give you the opportunity to like let our listeners know what what else you're doing, and like where else they can find you, and that kind of type of thing. So if you want to speak to that, please do. Yeah.
Yeah, so probably the easiest way to find me is on my my personal website, jasonmefford.com. You can usually find links to pretty much everything else I do over there. As well, I do a couple of podcasts myself, and those are on the website as well. So if you're interested, if you want to listen to more podcasts, I put out 2 or 3 a week through the couple that I do. But yeah, there's a lot of information on my website. There's a whole blog section, and links to pretty much everything else I do. And if you forget the easy jasonmefford.com, just type my name into Google, and I'll be 8 of the top 10. You'll be able to find me very easily. So.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jason. I truly appreciate your time, and you being on the show with me. So thank you
Well,
very
no,
much.
you're welcome, Zach. I appreciate you actually wanting to have me on. So this was
Of
a lot of
course.
fun.
Awesome. Well, all right. Well, thanks, man.
Thanks.
Hey there. So your knockout punch for today is that it is okay to outgrow relationships. We outgrow them all the time. You're likely not friends with the same people that you were friends with when you were 5, 7, 10, 12, 14. Doesn't matter. We all change. And it's okay to transition out of one relationship into another, or transition out of a relationship entirely, just to be by yourself. It's okay to leave intimate partners. We leave we leave business partners, we leave jobs, we leave friends. Some of us even transition our relationships around our family. So it's okay to give yourself permission to redefine your relationships with people. It's quite all right to leave one relationship and to go into another when the time is right. Only you will know what is right for you. So give yourself the permission, honor what you feel is right, and don't beat yourself up if you decide that it's time to move from one relationship to another. That's what I got for today. Thanks for joining me. All right, that wraps up today's episode of The Real Zack Olinger. Thanks again for listening. If you happen to find this episode insightful or valuable, I invite you to pass it along to somebody else, because chances are, if you found it valuable, they will too. If you're on Instagram, you can find me at The Real Zack Olinger. Until next time, everybody. Thanks for listening.